Thank you very much.
Hey, Christine Mays. My apologies. Okay.
Thank you. So just to let you guys know, development permit application DP 1278 is for a new and fully accessible Loudon Park Activity Center, and that's located at 4295 Victoria Avenue. The subject property is in Parks, Recreation and Culture 2, so that's PRC 2, and is designated Parks and Open Spaces in the city plan. The property is adjacent to Long Lake and is located within the Wellington neighborhood. And so while the subject property does fall within Development Permit Area 8, and that's forming character, institutional buildings are exempted from the requirement to obtain a development permit. However, in this case, the city is seeking DAP's expertise to provide recommendations regarding the form and character of the proposed activity center, and that's respective of the general design permit area design guidelines. No variances are anticipated for this application, and I appreciate time to introduce this item, and thank you, Madam Chair. Happy to answer any questions later once you have any.
Great. And Sue, who's going to be presenting this evening?
There are two presenters. It's myself, Mike Van Bakel, for the architectural firm, but I believe also we're waiting for Art Groot, who was going to present initial comments.
Oh,
I don't see him on here.
Not here.
No, I'm here.
Oh, there he is.
On the phone. Okay.
Sorry.
All right. And anytime you want, you can go ahead and share your screen as well for showing us the design.
Sure. I'll do a few opening comments, and then I don't have any screen share, but my name is Art Groot. I'm the Director of Facility and Park Operations, and the project kind of falls within my portfolio. We have Mike Strain here as well. He's the city project manager for the project, and so we're going to be available for any questions as they come up as well. Just a really high level background on the project. I mean, it really started out as a facility replacement project, but really ended up evolving into a bit of a park redevelopment project. And so some of those improvements include, but it's not limited to, us improving accessibility to the park, the facilities and the beach, accessible and universal public washrooms, a multi-purpose room for public rental, sewer line replacement and realignment. So we through Mike's department, we worked to add that in so we wouldn't have to do that in the future. And then, of course, office and training space for the primary user groups and secure storage for all of their equipment. You'll see playground equipment get replaced as well. And yeah, that's kind of just a really high level. The project has a long history of where it derives from, and it goes all the way back to 2006 is where it really started. Thanks.
Okay, so I suppose it's my turn. If it's all right, I'll share my screen and we'll begin the journey through. Has everyone got that on their screen? They should be seeing a couple of images.
Yep, we can see that. Thanks.
Okay, great. So as Art mentioned, I believe it was mentioned earlier, the subject property on the upper left is on Long Lake, which is right next to the Island Highway there. And the blue box shows the general location of the site. At the very tip of that small peninsula is Loudon Park. And in the larger image, you'll see just where that is located, if you can see my cursor running around there. A couple of images that we thought you might be interested in seeing. These are Google images of the park itself from the lake, high angle, from looking at the view southeast. And immediately to the right of that is from the northeast, looking to the northeast. Again, bottom left is looking northwest from Victoria Avenue. In the middle of that image, you can see the existing parking lot that's there. At the end of Victoria, there's a little red marker, and just beyond that is the existing facilities that have been there for many years now, which will be replaced as part of this project. There's a series of public washrooms in there, and there's some storage and club spaces for the rowing and paddling societies, which have been there for 20 some odd years now. And the right-hand image, again from the lake, and the far right, you can see that particular launching dock. This is where the club is currently launching their vessels from. And in the foreground here, that is a fishing dock that's been located there for some time now. We'll talk a little bit more about what's going to happen with these as the park is developed further. So a couple of street shots coming down Victoria and looking towards the lake, and in the immediate foreground there, or the background, you can see that is the existing facilities, which is a concrete block, rectilinear flat roof structure, typical park washrooms from the 60s, 70s. This particular building on the left will show up in some of our street views subsequent to this image, so you might want to mark that in your minds. We'll be looking at this street along here in that particular view. As we move further down the street, you'll see immediately left, that's where the parking is located, and that's shown in this middle image. Parking off to the left, it's accessed by dropping down at the bottom of the street, and then there's a one-way pull through into the parking zone here. According to the city bylaws, we have sufficient parking to support what's going on in the park, and there's a small existing it says existing boathouse. In fact, all that is storage space for things like paddles and life jackets. The actual storage for the boats is located in this area behind these larger trees. It's in a fenced enclosure, but it's entirely open to the weather, and the boats are exposed. And then again, that image of the boathouse that's going to be removed as part of this project and replaced with washrooms, etc. So this is the final approach down Victoria. This is the front of the building. It's going to be called the Loudon Park Rowing Paddling Activity Center. Immediately to the right, you'll see there's a fairly open glazing. That's the storage area for the boats, and the idea was to expose these beautiful, elegant craft to the public as they came through and offer filtered views of the lake through that. Immediately to the left of that is the club entrance, and there'll be a small offices associated with that. And then behind that, to the left here, that's the entrances to the washroom facilities that we're going to do there. And beyond that, again, as you'll see in the few images, you'll see where the public has an opportunity to rent space overlooking the lake. And this is that space that I was just talking about. Again, this is the boat storage facility, and this is a fairly old image, to be honest. We produced this about 1.5 years ago. So there are some minor modifications to this, but this is a general form and character of the building. You'll note the heavy timber, the curved roof, we'll talk about that in a minute, and its disposition on the site. What's not evident here is there will be a couple of these larger trees remaining in front of the building. We hope to save more than those, but those are the ones we can guarantee will exist. This is the current beach front that's sitting there, and this is the floats defining the swimming areas. That's a night shot of that same public space that's rentable. The washroom access is through here, and again the boat storage to the left. This is how the building will sit on the site, and it was a bit of a shoehorn. The requirements for the boats, which range to 60 feet in length and are obviously quite expensive, dictated the kinds of spaces we had to provide here for those. That's the coxed 8s, the 4s, the paired sculls, and then the canoes and kayaks that make up the balance of the club's stock all exist in this rectangle here. And you'll see that plan come up a little bit in a bit. This is roughly where the club space is. Again, that'll be more defined later. This will become the new location for the launch dock for the boats. The idea is that they are pulled from this storage facility down the ramp and onto the dock, the floating dock, where they're launched. This area here is the prep zone, and again, the park surrounding this is where we've done some work to enhance the playground spaces and the public amenities associated with that. There will be a great deal of replanting, etc., which my landscape architect, Jim, will get into once I finish my brief talk here. That is the landscape plan as it's currently laid out. Jim will talk to that in a little bit. These particular lined drawings are the existing trees that are to remain. They're the fairly large ones you saw in that photograph. And the colored drawn images here are the subsequent plantings that we'll be placing on the site. Now you'll notice it says lawn. That's existing. We don't intend to add any lawn, and depending on, I know that this is not something that the city wants to see in the riparian zone, so that will probably change in the future. That's to be decided with conversations with the city experts. This is the building. Again, there's only a couple of images left. This particular building, this is the storage area that we talked about for the boats. They'll be lined along racks here. They'll exit through doors here, here, and here. And this is the club space. This piece right here is an office here. Club space, which is really training zone, where they have weights here, resistance machines through here. And then this is a subsidiary service space. This is the new spaces we're providing for the public washrooms, which have change room facilities as part of this, and fully accessible washrooms. And this is also available in after hours to the people who will be using this space, which has a kitchen and 2 washrooms associated with it. And this space here, as you can see, it's mostly glazed and looks out through the park and to the lake, and again through this view to the launch area for the boats. And the plan is to have regattas from various other provinces where they bring their boats and race our teams here at this location. This is a shot down Victoria Avenue, so similar to those street shots we showed you earlier. That's the front facade of the building as you approach down Victoria. These are the trees that will be remaining, we know for sure. And a lower view here, again, a section through Victoria Avenue, so you can see that house that I mentioned earlier. It's sitting here, and this is the building. And you'll notice that the roof has a fairly distinctive curve to it. That was derived from the water lines on the watercraft. As they move through the water, a line develops on every watercraft, and it has this characteristic shape typically on these boats. And so you can see the vegetation that's currently existing in the parking area. That will change, will be added to by plantings that Jim will talk about subsequently. These are existing trees, properly scaled, and then the water is to the right here. And this is the building itself, just an architectural sheet out of our drawings. This is the approach, and again, you can see the glazing here, heavy timber columns which are supporting a heavy timber roof, and that characteristic curve. That's the view from the park itself. This is the reverse view from the large doors entering into the storage facility, and this is the lakeside view at the bottom. And that's the last image that I've got to present. There is another piece that we can pop into right now. Apologize, this should be at the top. Jim could speak to this if he's present. Jim, are you on the call?
Yeah, I'm on.
Okay. Did you want to spend some time discussing the approach to the siting of the building from your perspective, and talk perhaps about the landscape approach? You can just tell me to
thanks,
when you're ready.
Okay. Yeah, I forget you're in control of the slides. So there were some questions about the amount of information that was submitted. So I thought, in all fairness to the panel, it'd be good just to pull together some of the previous work and that was done. There was a lot of time spent with Mike and his firm siting the building and making sure everything worked. And this was analysis of how to get the shells in and out of the building, and how much space it took, and how the radius worked. And it was quite an exercise to make sure that it was going to, the facility was going to work the way it was supposed to. Next slide. At the same time, we also took the existing information and made sure all the grades would work for the site. And these basically relate to access and movement of the shells, the racing shells. As soon as we're outside the building to grade, the basic grades of the park itself remain exactly where they are because there's covered in existing trees. So next. This showed the planting that the the proposed planting at that time. And the parking lot was actually designed by Brenda Grice, and the walkways that associated with the parking lot and all that stays intact. Next. This was the first run at tree removal and remainder of existing trees, and that's since evolved with arborist input and management, and the building's been shifted around and things have been moved related to the leaf strip. Next. So this is the drawing you would have got typically for a design panel presentation. It was some character backup and lots of descriptions of what some of the other hard elements are. And if you look close, that was submitted for a development permit. The scheme is actually fairly close, but it's not exactly the current scheme. There's been a lot of changes since that time. But typically this was prepared for design panel when it was determined that it would go through the development permit process. And then when that changed, you probably didn't get to see the background. Next. So this is moving on to the building permit submission. In preparation for the building permit submission. Two things. This was not developed in mind for design panel, and it actually is a planting plan, so it has a full plant list. All the plants are labeled, sized, all the species are determined, and all the sizes of individual plants and the numbers are all there. So the way our scope of work at it worked is initially we're heavily involved in the landscape concept, and after conceptual design, the relationship between the building and the parking and the hard landscape becomes the responsibility of the architect and the engineer. So next. So we were requested to put a presentation drawing for the panel, and so we colored the building permit drawing, and I think we were sort of caught in a situation where it was awkward to try to create a development permit drawing out of the working drawing. So we're assuming that that's where some of the questions came from. Speaking to this, Mike's pretty well covered it. The colored trees are the proposed. The outline trees are current existing trees to remain. The white areas are the paving around the building, and they're labeled actually on this drawing with grades and also on the architectural drawing. The darker colored drawings over to the existing handicap accessible launch dock, crushed gravel, the white are paved concrete, and that's likely to be a broom finish concrete. We'll be recommending saw cut construction joints for ease of movement. And the light gray areas with the sort of the structures indicated, those are play structures, not specified, but a general indication of what kind of structures would go in there. And that was to be worked out with the parks, and depending on budget, this budget has been rising continuously on this project. Next. So what I wanted to do is fill in some of the blanks that are part of the hard landscape. Mike already talked about this. This shows all the paving and the detailing and how the seating seats work and how the grades adjust to grade and where the stairs are. Next. This shows detailed slopes and configuration of the hard landscape around the building. Next. This details the shower area, garbage area, and the proposed new signage, the welcoming sign for the facility, and a concrete bench as well. No, good. You keep me going. These are all the stair details specific to the site, all worked out by the architect with the grades associated. Next. This was a civil site plan. This shows primarily servicing, but what's relevant about this one, it shows the stormwater management, which was detailed in a rock pit situation. It showed sort of middle of the drawing, upper middle of the drawing. Next. This is sanitary servicing. Next. On the left is a detail of the rock pit configuration, and on the right was confirmation that the emergency vehicles would be able to circulate through the existing parking lot, and there was a pad added for emergency vehicle, and that's been graded by civil to make sure all that works. Next. This was the electrical plan. There's 5 additional lights around the parking area. Next.
We don't know if we need to see this, Jim.
Okay, well, let me just quickly go through it. So around the building, I thought they were pot lights in the soffit, but they're actually up lights, but the building's been well lit, and also wall lights in the building. Next. That's the new fixture. They're solar powered pole lights, 16-foot height. Next. Light distribution. Next. This is actually the existing one on site, which looks about 16 feet and is identical and blends into the site quite well. So they'll be replaced.
Right. On the bottom, you can see the existing storage of the in this case, the canoes.
Yeah, and what's changing is the parking lot was closed at 6 o'clock in the winter months and 10 o'clock in the summer months, but that will likely change, as will the lighting requirements with the new facility and the public room that's out for rent. Next. This is what we represented on the plan. Hasn't been reviewed and hasn't been costed through parks, and it might be what they're looking for or might not, but it's fairly significant intent anyway. Next. That's the layout. Next. That was the other structure that was showed closer to the waterfront. Next. That's a younger age group structure that would be considered. Next. Simpler design, relative budget. Next. Actually flip through these. This just shows the quality of what's being proposed.
Right.
Next. Yeah.
That's existing.
Okay. That's existing. Next. Existing. That's the existing signage, which will be redone with the new building sign. Bike racks, core bike racks. We haven't talked to parks about the bench design. There's already benches on site that potentially could be used, pretty rudimentary, but if they were looking for a recommendation, this is what we recommend to match the sophistication and flow of the building.
Thanks, Jim. I think that's the last slide. I'll just pop back to the architectural.
Okay.
And I'm just leaving it on this sheet in case there's any discussion required on these. That sort of ends our presentation of the building and the park upgrades that we have developed so far. So we're looking to, let's say it, pick your brains, ask you to provide some of your expertise and some guidance if you see something that you'd like to make comment on. Where the whole point of this is to try to develop this to the point where we present the best possible outcome for the city in this on this site with this building. So if there's anything that you'd like to share, let us know. Otherwise, I'll stop the sharing and I'll turn this back over to the chairperson.
Great. Thanks for your presentation. Yeah, if you could stop sharing the screen, that would be great. Okay. Good. And maybe before we get going here, do any of the panel members have any questions for city staff on this project? Kevin?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair. It appears on the site plan that there's a couple of sections of roof that extend over the watercourse setback, and I just want to make sure that normally aerial encroachments are not permitted into watercourse setbacks. I just want to make sure there's not going to be any issues with that going forward.
We were assured there would not be, but I'm not the final authority on that. Art, could you comment on that?
That was a question, I think, for city staff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Was it? Christine?
I'm just going to take a look and make sure that that is not a concern, and I will touch base with you in a moment.
Okay, maybe in the meantime,
That's all I have, and yeah,
So
it
any other
appears
questions?
on their site plan
Yeah.
that there's a couple of sections of roof that extend beyond the watercourse setbacks. So I just want to make sure that there's no issues with that going forward, that it gets taken care of. Thank you.
Okay, we'll give Christine some time to look into that, and perhaps we can maybe start our comments. Does anybody else have a question for staff? Oh, you did, Angela, as well. Okay. Do we want to, want to take that right now, Christine, or you want to finish up? Okay, go ahead.
It could be something you look into as well. I was just curious, because it's part of the guidelines, and it wouldn't be part of this presentation, if this project has been working with transit, and if there's been some transit improvements for integration of a bus shelter or bus stop. If there isn't one already, I'm just curious what the transit situation is, if it's going to be, if it has been looked at for improvements.
Yeah, so I guess what I would say is this isn't a typical development permit. So this isn't one that was submitted to the city. This is, come forward more for consideration of design guidelines. And so it wouldn't have been referred like you'd see with a typical development permit.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, maybe we can just have everybody give their comments and so on the project. Since this is a park, maybe we'll start with our landscape designer, Kate, if you'd like to go ahead.
Oh, okay, thank you. Well, first, thank you very much for your presentation. And I'm glad we get an opportunity to comment on it. I always like seeing what's happening in the city. And I want to compliment you on the development of the building and especially the roof. I think the direction it has gone is really a lot more sensitive to where it is situated, and I really especially enjoy your attention to the views through the building, and I like that. I like the fact that we get to see into where the boats are stored. I think that's an excellent added sort of programming of the building. So just wanted to make those comments. I guess I have a couple questions for the whole team. So this might be for parks and facility ops, I'm not sure. But I am interested in that watercourse setback, and that the Michael architect, you referenced the concrete retaining wall, and I'm sorry, is that added or existing?
That's all existing.
Okay, and
we add nothing in that. We were not permitted to touch anything in there, and what we're doing, in fact, is removing some of the existing asphalt pathways.
okay,
And we'll be returning all of that, and part of that discussion will happen once the building is in place and we have some expertise brought in to take a look at what's there and how best to resolve all of that. It's difficult to imagine how that's really going to work.
Yeah.
Right now, we had some comments about the fact that the existing retaining wall was actually supporting the trees that are there. So by removing that, we'll end up dropping some of the grades, which might expose tree roots, which we were a little concerned about. So there will be some conversations around that with the arborists and with city staff on what the best approach might be.
okay, thank you. I just haven't been there for a while to the site, and I couldn't remember. But so my main comment, or I guess I have my next question is for the whole team, and maybe Jim as well may be able to ask. I'm wondering if there has been any discussion with or direction with the planting palette or the planting in taking a more restorative approach. So possibly finding the opportunities where you can maybe start introducing some of those shoreline plants where you don't think that it will impact the existing trees, the tree roots, the building, and have those discussions been happening? I'm not quite seeing it on the plan, but I would love for this project to try to take that approach, especially at the shore edge, where possible. So I don't know.
Did you want to respond to that?
Yeah, if anyone wants to respond.
I apologize. I had a FaceTime come in. It was on the screen. I was trying to shut it off, and I shut everything off. So if you can bear with me, can you repeat the gist of what you said, and I'll happily respond. So.
For sure. I'm wondering if in your conversations with city and around the plantings, whether there was a discussion about restoration and looking at how you could restore that shore edge in some places, recognizing that, as Michael has just pointed out, that there's concern about that, removing that concrete wall, that may have to stay, but there's certainly edges and opportunities to possibly suggest this had a different character. And what also I thought was, so that's sort of my question was there any discussion or direction in that way? And then if there isn't, I would love to see it take that direction. Because actually in the renderings of the architecture, you show a planting palette in the renderings at the entrance side that looks kind of like a lake edge. There's sort of wild grasses and sort of very loose and wild. And I think this project has an opportunity to take on that kind of planting for the city parks, to sort of take a little bit more of a natural direction instead of a little bit of the formal. There's some formality still happening here with the tree selections. You have blossoming trees following past. So I just kind of wondered what your direction. I recognize that you may have been given a direction and that's what you've been following.
Yeah.
Very long.
Yeah, no, good points. And yeah, I think the project had a long history, and our sort of primary role was to make sure that it would function. And there was a point when it wasn't actually functioning. Like, the building looked great and it was positioned for various reasons, but you couldn't get the racing shells in and out of it because of how much room they took. So there was a bit of a preoccupation with that. There's also the history of the site as one of like a jewel in the park system. I don't know Nanaimo that well, but I would assume it's the nicest beach, if not the only beach in the park system, only major beach. So it's kind of an urban situation. The whole site is lawn, unless it's paved, except where the lawn won't grow under the Douglas fir. The Douglas fir is another primary characteristic of the site, that it was pretty well treasured, even though it sort of conflicts with the idea of having a nice sunny beach, because the beach is on the north side of the vegetation. So, and it's a large building to have to position. The other thing was, when we went out and spent some time on the site and we looked at all the edge conditions and how the facility would work, we were surprised at how resilient the fir trees were with asphalts running over their roots. But it was surprising when we walked along the beach frontage, the erosion in the beach itself and behind the wall was quite surprising. But more than that, large roots from the Douglas fir went down behind the wall and come up in the beach. And like significant, we've got pictures of masses of roots. It's a kind of a strange phenomenon. So there's a sensitivity to that. The original idea was to get rid of the wall and do something to naturalize the edge or regrade the edge. But the issue was, as soon as you start trying to regrade the site, you're into the roots of the trees. And so the trees are going to suffer because of that. the erosion, the amount of erosion was there sort of highlighted because we said, no, we think you should leave that wall in there because it protects the trees, but it also minimizes erosion, and just rebuild the beach. The other, not problem, but the other functionality of the site is the relationship between the beach, the seating, which occurs on the wall naturally, and the upland, if you will, lawn areas where people spread blankets and have picnics and have the kids and family, and they get set up in amongst the trees or in front of the trees to enjoy the beachfront experience. And imagine on a hot summer day, the place is just crawling with people. So the functionality of the lawn areas, in terms of the function of this asset in the park system being an actual swimmable, beautiful sand beach, we felt was a supporting attribute to it. So while there was discussion about the lee strip, that was called a lee strip, not necessarily a riparian zone, in order for that, if there was a strong wish to turn it all back into a riparian zone, you kind of lose the whole functionality of this jewel of a swimmable beach. So, I'm sort of.
Yeah, no.
Now, having said that, we're open on the edges, but I think with care not to go against what the asset is for. On the entry side of the building, that was supposed to be a grassy look, and it was supposed to match the look of the renderings. We initially had rushes, and I think Carrick's in there and Parks Department, who've the horticulturists who vetted the plant list, had some suggestions, and one of them was to get rid of the natural rushes. They don't have good experience with them as what they quoted as a ground cover. So we went to the kind of the Carl Forster canary reedgrass, which was too big. The two grasses that we think are appropriate, apart from the rushes or the Carrick's, are the Carl Forster in a dwarf version, and also Mexican feathergrass would give the look, but that's an invasive species, and we didn't really want to introduce that. So we're open to that for that area, because certainly that adds to the look, doesn't affect the functionality at all. So,
yeah, I reckon. Thank you for giving more explanation. I recognize all the constraints. I guess I'm thinking to look at where there's opportunities where you can maybe have fingers of restoration coming up on the edges. And I suppose that's just going to be my comment generally to the parks. And so that maybe the edges of the development have that sort of any opportunity to, have some improvement on the edges would be, I think, beneficial to everybody.
Great.
And not just humans.
I think this concern actually affects the overhang of the building then. Christine is ready with an answer, so maybe we can just let her step in here and respond to that question of Kevin's.
Perfect. So just letting you guys know that the consultants and the project managers are working very closely with the city's environmental protection staff, and that's to ensure that it conforms with the bylaw, especially respective of those watercourse setbacks. So certainly something that is being looked at. So that's helpful, hopefully.
Okay. Thanks, Christine. So Kate, if you have, do you want to respond some more to?
No, I think just my overall comment is that I would love to see the city try to treat this as not only as a great place for us humans to occupy and enjoy, but also to acknowledge that we are on the lake edge, and there's a lot of other species that rely on the conditions that we can create, and I think you can have a really lovely harmony, and also in doing that not increase your maintenance, because I know with my experience working here in Nanaimo, we have a shortage of people to work and maintain our parks, and so always looking at ways, I believe looking at ways to wild the landscape it is much more cost effective, and it's just about changing our attitude and approach of what landscape should look like. And I would love for the city to really embrace that here. And I think you have an opportunity without with all the constraints you have. So I'm just going to have a blanket comment like that. And then that, I think that can translate into all the elements that you're adding with the play structures and the location of those structures, and maybe even questioning the need of all of them. And that maybe you can accommodate all the users with more natural features.
Yeah, and I will say we're totally open to that. And certainly when I was reading through the emails, Parks is working directly with aquamarine planner biologists to make sure that the location of the docks, and that's the prime area where an actual riparian zone, could be worked into it. And there's other areas outside of the movement areas for the boats. There's lots of potential on both ends of it. We tried to start something between the building and the beach, even recognizing that we're taking away from some of the functionality. And actually there was a sensitivity that we were doing too much. And so we took it out, and somebody made a comment about the large overhangs of the building. They're somewhat restrictive too. So we're not against any of that. And whatever balance Parks would like to achieve, we're open to that for sure. So.
Well,
Thank you.
great. That's all. Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for listening.
Yeah.
Okay. Perhaps Angela, you'd like to make some comments?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation. It's a great project, and I'm pleased to see this project to this point. It's a really important part of our community for recreation and culture, and I'm a big sporting supporter, so I think it's really great to not only support the sport in this location, this long-standing club, but also having a great facility is really important too, and something that they can be proud of. And the city, the community can be proud of as well. So congratulations to getting to the development permit or the building permit stage. I want to wholeheartedly support and echo Kate's sentiments. That was one of the things one of the points I just wanted to touch on was just, looking, obviously, enhancing and mitigating riparian is always very important. And it's obviously a very busy human occupied location. So it's not intended to be remediated completely, but if you could pull, I'm not going to repeat what Kate said, but pull that into the actual landscape design as well, I think that would be great. And it's also sort of part of the whole Reimagine Nanaimo's perspective of supporting and enhancing pre-existing sites that have been altered already. So that'd be great if there could be some enhancements to that respect. And otherwise, I see this location, obviously it's going to draw some further attention and maybe more club members. And obviously the club is hoping to get more regattas and different things happening. So it's going to become a lot busier. And that was the reason I was asking about the transit, because not even just local transit, but maybe people coming from out of town might be staying in a hotel. They might want to catch the bus or whatever. I just think it's important to just have that conversation about the transit links, but also, that's sort of a bigger aspect, but the bike situation. So failing the bus transport, I feel like having a really significant bike parking area would be important for this project. I know lots of families might like to venture down there on their bikes, and I think if there's an obvious biking sort of section where people know that there's you're almost inviting people to come on their bikes, having something sort of obvious and available for people, and maybe some secure bike lockers for e-bikes. So lots of people, I don't know if they want to just park their e-bike without having something more secure, because they're so expensive. But anyhow, that was just something that I feel like is important in this site, is having opportunities for people to, a lot of opportunity for people to come on their bikes and or transit. Otherwise, I did feel like, I don't know, is there any green roof or solar discussion through the chair to the staff maybe on this one? Or maybe the project manager knows more because Christine hasn't worked on this project.
Christine, do you have a response to that? Just if there's been any green considerations there?
I didn't read anything in the staff report that Sadie popped in there. I did wish to say that there, in respect to the bus transit comment, there is a 2 bus stops on either end at Norwell and Victoria. So it's just down the road from the proposed development. Okay. And so I'll turn it over to the applicants, respective of if there's any integration of solar panels or green roofs.
No, we had a discussion about that early on in the process. Solar was one aspect. There's the trees around the building, and there will be trees on the south side, the west, and the north side. They pretty much preclude effective solar, and that kind of changed the calculation a bit. And the idea of a green roof was entertained early on. They can be high maintenance, and I think in this case they're also quite heavy. So we are already dealing with fairly heavy loads because of the spans involved, and we are in an earthquake zone. So when you have large spans and large heavy roofs, it makes us a bit nervous, and we tend to have to overbuild. So we were conscious of that. That's something that we can have a discussion further about, but at the time it was discussed. We looked into it fairly carefully and made a sort of educated choice not to go that route. If that's something that is directed by the client, then we will again look at it. I'm not so sure it's a great idea for this project.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't sure based on the renderings how many trees were going to be taken down. So I wasn't sure that solar would be a reasonable choice, but okay. I just wanted to see if it was really feasible to implement any sort of green roof, even if it was just a portion, but I know that's a big conversation, so.
It is a big conversation.
Yeah.
we rest assured we did discuss it. We did come to the conclusion that it was probably not something we should pursue on this building.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And I think those were my main points, and I just want to thank you again for your presentation, and I'll pass it on.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Angela. And Ken, do you have some comments to share?
Well, thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you to the presenters. This great scheme you presented. Coming from a background of facility planning, I admire your integration of the functional planning with the building planning and the architecture. So, and what you've accomplished, I think, is excellent. And what you presented the rendering certainly looked great, and it would be a great asset to the city and to the Parks and Rec Department. I don't have too many other comments since Kate has spent a lot of time on landscaping. Other than hopefully you had a nice night rendering, and hopefully that building is used at night so that, when you drive along the Island Highway, you can see the reflection of this building on the lake. I think it'll be a great addition at Loudon Park. And I think the exposure that the boating committee will get will certainly, I think, help their membership in attracting more people to take up rowing as an activity. But other than that, I have really nothing to add other than it was I think you did a great job with what you had. Although it took a long time to get there.
Certainly did.
Great. Thanks, Ken. Jason.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation. As the other said, I'm very excited to see this moving forward. I had several comments. I won't belabor the points. Some of their committee members, specifically around the green roof, sustainable opportunities to integrate sustainable practices into the building. I had questions about the transit access. It didn't look like it was able to facilitate, the turning radius as necessary. So understanding that that's happening close by, but not on site. Also, it seemed like there weren't enough opportunities for bike racks, or even if it was an enclosed, controlled bike room, might facilitate, kids and youth coming to the site on their own. That something that seemed missing. The only other real comments I had, the overhang into the riparian zone notwithstanding, it seemed like there was no covered outdoor areas, actually, which I thought was also a bit surprising. And I thought, there might be opportunity to extend some of the overhang by the water. I don't think it would substantially kind of mess up the cleanness of the party you have with the massing with the boat and the programmatic portion of it. That might be one area to be able to capture some covered outdoor space. And then the only other comment I had is it seemed to a shame that the entire envelope was corrugated metal, and it might be interesting to be able to incorporate some more natural materials, and maybe that could be where keeping the corrugated metal on the boathouse aspect of it, and maybe some wood or some other natural materials, more tactile, where the community will be interacting with the rentable area and the programmatic area. But other than that, those are my only comments. I thought otherwise it was a nice project and will complement the lakefront quite nicely. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We'll certainly take those comments into consideration. Appreciate that.
Thanks, Jason. Kevin, sorry, I just turned my speaker off.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Michael and Art and everyone on the application that are putting forth this structure. Very nice presentation. I have no issues whatsoever really with form and character, except for one minor thing. The existing, the ramp that is currently used, I guess it would be on the southwest side. What's the program for that? Because that was currently the ramp that was used for most people using it from the clubs and whatnot.
Would you like me to speak to that, Madam Chair?
Yes.
Okay. If I can share my screen again, I'll just give you a quick orientation.
Sure.
That'd be all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Are we back to the 4 images?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So you're talking about the existing boat launch, which is right here in the upper left image. Now, the intent was to have this one swapped to this location here. And at the time, it was intended to move the boat, the fishing dock, which is here, and reverse locations. It's simply switching the two. There is an ongoing report that will determine what the best location for the activity, which is fishing, whether that is back here or if there's a better location in close to where this is now. We have a real potential conflict of having the 60-foot Cox 8s trying to launch near where someone is casting their rod. So that is an ongoing conversation. And I know that the club has been raising funds to try to replace this aging facility here with a more modern floating structure that will be closer to the water and will be, it's constructed of aluminum and plastic so that it will have much greater longevity than what we currently have, which is already sort of in a state of degradation, I think. Ultimately, the intent is to take this currently and move it to here and ultimately replace it with a new launch ramp that will be here.
Okay, yeah, because there was no real wayfinding program really for that ramp and what it was going to be used for. But if you're going to move it, that seems to make a lot of sense if you're going to do that.
That was the intent.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I'm just going to move. I'm just going to get out of the sharing.
Okay.
I think no one but you and I want to look at that right now.
Yeah, so as long as that's dealt with. Speaking of wayfinding, the public bathrooms and the tot lot are really kind of hidden around the back side of the building, and there appears to be wayfinding from the parking lot side of the building, but there's really nothing as far as wayfinding from the beach side. And if Michael or anybody else wants to speak to that, how that's going to be programmed.
Well, if you're talking about signage as a wayfinding element, that's something we've been discussing, and we'll finalize that with Parks. We're trying to make it as unobtrusive as possible, yet visible from the location of the main park entry. The principal sidewalk, if you want to call it that, the accessible ramp down, which is essentially a sidewalk at 1 to 20 slope, takes one down that 1 meter differential and ends up right in front of those washrooms, and at that point there will also be the shower. So from that perspective, you can't avoid it if you're taking the pathway down.
Yeah, only if you're taking the pathway down. But if you're coming from the other direction, the more northerly direction,
from off the
to go
beach,
to the bathroom, there's really no path along the beach to get through there, and you might want to consider ways to make the public use of those bathrooms and the tot lot a little bit more noticeable, and whether it's through pathways, and you're dealing also with slope and elevation as well, and getting back all the way around that side and coming back into the public bathrooms. So just maybe give some thought to that and how you can deal with people. A lot of people spend a lot of time on that beach, and they're going to be cutting across. They're not going to be going down towards a ramp or the dock there and working their way around up that ramp, I don't think. But you might just want to consider ways about that to make sure that it works efficiently. Aside from that, with respect to the form and character, I love the building. I love the use of the heavy timber, and I agree with Jason. If you can incorporate some more like natural elements in the facade, along with the stainless or the corrugated metal, would work very well. What is with the beautiful roof that you've designed, Mike? How are you planning to work in the mechanical on the roof?
Oh, there won't be any mechanical on the roof. We've designed it. There's a mezzanine level within the building itself.
Okay.
That is essentially an outdoor room that's enclosed, so it's within the skin of the building, and we've louvered it so that the heat pumps work essentially outside but contained under a roof.
Okay, perfect, because I don't want anything to mess up that beautiful roof stuff. And aside from that, any objection to incorporating glazing in the bay doors?
They do have glazing.
They have glazing?
They're a Lexan product, so we were cognizant of potential, call it vandalism. So we've taken a page out of the auto dealership book, and those are roll-up doors. They coil.
Okay.
And each of the slats is fully glazed with Lexan.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I have nothing else to say other than it is a beautiful project for the site, and I live not too far away from there, so it's an area that we like to visit, and this is just going to brighten it up a lot. So thank you very much for your presentation, and Art, it's great to see you again. So take care.
You too, Kevin. Nice to see you.
Take care.
Good to see your face.
Great, thanks. Okay, I think that's got everybody except for me here. Yeah. First of all, I just like to say it's just a lovely, lovely building. Really like it. It's very thoughtful design that incorporates so many different activities into one building. And it's a delight to see this after so many of those sort of concrete boxes that we have in our parks. So I'm looking forward to seeing this project happen for sure. And one of the things I really like about it is your emphasis on accessibility. And really appreciate that, having fully accessible washrooms and so on. And I'm just wondering, is the indoor shower fully accessible as well?
It's an outdoor shower. I'm sorry, that wasn't clear. It's a typical stand with shower heads on it, surrounded by laser cut aluminum panels. And there's 3 heads intended to be there, 3 separate laser cut panels providing some visual screening for that. And really the idea is simply to wash the sand off, but that's fully accessible. And so there'll be different heights for controls for children and people in wheelchairs. So yeah, the openings are fully accessible. It's just like a concrete pad with screening around it.
And I seem to recall you mentioning something about the dock or being accessible.
Dock is currently accessible. Yeah, that was Jim mentioned that. That was designed by a landscape architect years ago. So that still is the case. We won't be changing that.
Okay. And what about, have you thought about or already planned for accessible picnic tables?
Well, we haven't got so far as planning the actual site furnishings. That's going to be a discussion with Parks. But absolutely, because we were told early on that the Parks had a strong desire to make everything accessible, including the beach itself. So there are products that we can use to lay down temporary mats, for example, and large-wheeled wheelchairs or broad-wheeled wheelchairs to get children and adults down onto the beach themselves. So yeah, that obviously will be something we will think about in the future. That makes perfect sense.
Excellent.
I'll just add one small comment to that, Madam Chair.
Mm-hmm.
If you've not been to Departure Bay lately, and we may have taken it out now that the season's over, but through the summer we did a trial installation of the product's called a mobility mat, and it's
I think I read something about it. Yeah,
it's an accessible beach mat that we did a trial installation at Departure Bay, which is a very different installation than it would be at this location, just due to the tides and the really rough, rocky surface. So it was a good one to really try it out on, and we had really good success. We had members of the accessibility and inclusivity committee come have a look and come try it out with some wheelchairs. And then the plan is to add mats like that at some of our other waterfront destinations, like Westwood Lake Park, like Loudon Park, just to improve that accessibility for all at a location like this.
Great, really appreciate that. I used to take my father to picnic in Maffeo Sutton Park, and it was often the few ones that were accessible where you could push your wheelchair over. It was really difficult to push them across the lawn to one and try and find a place to picnic. So I think that's excellent. It'd be great to see more of that in the city. So really appreciate it. But anyway, thanks to everybody for the presentation. Again, great project, and looking forward to seeing it happen. So
us too. Thanks for your commentary.
Okay, so to the committee then, I'm hearing a few recommendations that perhaps we can offer these people for their project. And let's see, first of all, consider where possible to remediate the landscape and shoreline, adding a planting directed at restoring, I think I'll cut that out. Okay, consider where possible to remediate the landscape and shoreline. Does that sort of fit the bill for Kate and Angela, who sort of made most points about that?
Yeah, I would maybe just, sorry, if I may, Madam Chair.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say,
to
pull it through the site, like.
Oh, okay. So consider where possible to remediate the landscape and shoreline throughout the site?
Yes.
Okay. And then I think Angela, you'd mentioned considering the transportation links, but I think Christina found out that there's bus stops fairly close. So maybe rather than that, consider ways to enhance the use of the park for bike riders by including secure parking for bikes. Does that work for people? I think, and Jason's mentioned that. Okay. And consider a covered outdoor area. Consider adding some natural materials on the facade along with corrugated metal. And consider ways to improve wayfinding and paths to the washroom from the beach and from the tot lot. Does that hit everything for everybody? Okay, so that's in total 6 recommendations. And perhaps we could have a motion to accept this proposal. Well, we don't really accept it. Offer these recommendations to the group and sorry. So perhaps we can have a motion to accept this list of recommendations to offer to this project. So
I'll make that recommendation to accept the application as presented, along with those. Yeah, the motion. I'll make a motion to accept the application as presented, and along with those recommendations.
6 recommendations, right? Okay, and can I have a seconder? Angela, and all in favor? Okay, that's it. Thank you very much, people, and appreciate your presentation. Great.
Thanks very much,
everyone. Thank you for the time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, now we've got our second presentation for the evening. This is a property on Highland Boulevard, and City Planner George Fuji will present it. Introduce it. Go ahead, George.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick note that the applicant has got to catch a flight at 6:30, so I'm going to make my comments as quickly as possible. So this is a development permit application at 2180 Highland Boulevard. It's the vacant paved parking lot property which abuts up against the Brooks Landing Shopping Center. The owner of the subject property is also the owner of the shopping center. There's some existing easements and covenants in place that allow all of the required parking for the subject site to be accommodated on the shopping center site. And if you notice on the site plan, that's what they have done. Property is zoned neighborhood center CC2 and designated mixed use corridor in the city plan, and the proposed use and build form is consistent with the plan. The property falls within development permit area 8 for form and character, and the relevant design guidelines are the city's general DP area guidelines. The applicant is requesting one variance, and that is to reduce the parking lot east side setback from 3 meters to 1 meter, or 1.13 meters. And with that, I'll forward back to the chair.
Okay, and does anybody in the committee here on the panel have a question for staff? No. Okay, and who's presenting tonight?
Rob?
Yes, that's myself, Rob Mueller, Capel Architect. Thank you very much, everybody. I will just share my screen. Just give me a second here to pull it up to share some of the drawings. So the development at 2180 is for a new single-story retail building on an existing paved parking lot area. The demo plan shows on the screen basically what is there existing, and then we plan on taking this is a separate property and redeveloping it. There was an existing development permit pulled on this property in 2016. And it did receive development permit. It even went through building permit approval and received building permit approval. And then the owner decided to cancel the project and proceed. Now here in 2022, they have decided to now proceed with the project and redo it. development permit, of course, has expired, so hence us having to redo a development permit application. We have tried to maintain as much as possible the existing form and character of the building, but at the same time, the zoning has changed from the original plan, so there were a couple of items that we did have to update and put into our plan so that we could meet the current zoning. One example of that is loading docks. The current plan requires 2 loading docks. The original plan had 1 loading dock. So we were able to accommodate a second loading dock in our plan on the north side of the building. Part of our plan is regarding fire truck access to our building. So that necessitated the original parking tree, which is along here, which is on the adjacent property, to be redesigned so we can get the proper turn radii, as well as the hatched area indicates the heavy duty asphalt that we must put in there to support the loads of the fire trucks. Based on that redesign, we were able to introduce some landscape islands in the middle of the new parking tree, as well as infrastructure for future electric car charging stations down here at this end. Part of the plan as well is the Highland Boulevard entrance into the site, which is down along the south side here. We were requested to include concrete sidewalks and curbs across the front of our property to basically the edge of our property line, which we have been able to do. So that now creates a more of a safety barrier for vehicles coming along Highland Boulevard, entering, exiting the site from the pedestrians who will now be on a raised concrete curb and sidewalk as they walk into the residential area to the west of us. And based on the grading, we had to extend the concrete sidewalk into the property and do this little cutback just based on grading so that we don't have an excessive slope coming down into the site. I'll pull up in a second a Google map of the area, and you can see in the Google map just how bad this site and slope is. Right here is an existing pedestrian underpass underneath the Island Highway. So we're recommending that remains. We are realigning the pedestrian crosswalk because right now it's kind of skewed on the road, but with us doing this work, we'll be realigning that. And then that will maintain and actually increase the pedestrian access through the site to access the existing Brooks Shopping Mall, as we've carried not only the concrete sidewalk across the front of our building, but also across the loading area onto a new concrete sidewalk that we'll be putting in, and then a new raised pedestrian access across the existing road here to access just in front of the Staples. The Staples entrance is just a little further too. So that is the basics of the site itself, of the hard copy of the site itself. The building is just interior rectangle for multiple tenants. For commercial retail, which will complement the existing shopping mall. Exterior elevations have been updated slightly. The original plan made extensive use of masonry, and we have changed that to a different material to soften it. Masonry is a very hard material, so we went with a siding, which is a cedar plank siding, hardy, and then the Alucobond panels that they had on the original design we've changed with hardy panels to get that same look, but just using a different material. So the look of the building is almost exactly the same as it was as the original DP, and the color scheme is very close to the original color scheme on the building itself. With the grading, there is on the Highland Boulevard side, there's a really high grade. We have to cut down on the north side of our building. Our building is actually raised from the grade because the existing grade slopes that much. On to landscaping. So I'll just pull up just a quick Google map of the existing site for everyone to see. So this is the existing site here. So here you can see from this concrete post up to here how severe of a slope we have to our site. So we have to accommodate that. And then on here is the existing pedestrian underpass. Here's the pedestrian crosswalk, the existing crosswalk that we'll be realigning. Right now, there's currently just a painted line that separates pedestrian and bicycles from the traffic. So this painted line essentially would be replaced with the concrete curb and the concrete sidewalk. And then that will then wrap down around this shrub and then wrap into our site, wrapped around the building. And then as the pedestrian, and then here on this end next to the Staples, this existing island would come out, and we're proposing stretching it more angular from the existing hedges so that we can get that concrete sidewalk in. And then right just in front of this painted stop bar is where we would have the raised pedestrian access across to the existing sidewalks in front of Brooks Landing for pedestrians to access the rest of the site from there. Landscaping is being proposed to be around the front and the back setbacks and behind the garbage enclosure to be re-landscaped. We do have a proposed pylon sign that we're showing for now that will be designed later, and we do have a water chamber that needs to be here as part of utility connection to the site. So those items we had to have. The rest of the trees and the shrubs and the bushes are all being addressed to take care of and replace what used to be asphalt and is not new building. The existing hedges on the north side of our property, we're proposing to maintain them. We will do a little bit of pruning because they are overgrown. And there's some existing hedges on the west property line that we are proposing to replace with new landscaping and new trees on that side. By the time the work and construction gets done in this area, they would most likely not survive. So we just propose to just replace it with new. And then on this little bump out here, higher angled bump out is where we put even more additional landscaping from this residential area into the parking area here. And then we get into details. We do have, I did receive a preliminary letter as part of the invitation to this that had some staff comments. So I'm not sure if those are all the staff comments or if that was just a preliminary look at. But one of the comments on there was regarding some public space for the potential restaurant or for public to sit. So we have proposed in this area at the moment to be a potential outdoor seating area if this tenant is a restaurant. And then we do have, we can add in additional benches throughout the site. Currently, we don't show any at the moment, but we'd be happy to add additional ones as needed. We're currently showing 2 bike racks right now, one here on this side of the site, and then the other one on the other side, just tucked around the corner. So the bike is out of the way from pedestrians using this. And then we have the double loading dock. The other comment was to push the loading dock further towards the west, which we can do. These rectangles on the plan are to the zoning bylaw sizes that are indicated for a loading area, loading stall size. So I did pull it back off of the pedestrian crosswalk here a little bit, but if you wish for me to go further, I can definitely do that. It's just the further we go just reduces the landscape area because whatever we push back, we'd have to maintain the asphalt on the front. So if we go back 10 feet, we're losing 10 feet of landscaping and gaining 10 more feet of asphalt at the front, as an example. I believe that is everything at the moment. And thank you for your time. Any additional questions?
Great, thanks, Rob. Maybe you can stop sharing your screen and then we'll have the panel respond. So maybe Kevin, you'd like to start on this one?
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Rob. Don't really have too much concerns with form and character. It's sort of, it is what it is, fitting in with a shopping mall or plaza. And my concerns are really a little bit more with the landscape concept. You mentioned your rationale regarding the outdoor amenity space, but I think you should probably try to revisit that. I think there might be ways to look at the loading bays and find ways to be able to get the amenity space to work. Along the landscaped area along Highland Boulevard, it appears that you don't have any trees there. Is that correct, Rob? There's a pylon sign there, I believe, that you're...
No, there is some trees. Let me just pull up the plan again. I'll just quickly share my screen and zoom in.
Yeah, go ahead.
And I apologize, everybody. I'm under the gun here. So there's one tree here that's kind of hidden among everything else. And I believe the CO2, and COT2, I believe those are smaller trees. But there is one tree proposed here.
Okay. The only other thing with the landscape concept is I believe all your trees are deciduous trees. And I think if you can put, a couple of conifers in there, I think that would be nice. Obviously, you might not want to put them on Highland Boulevard where the pylon sign could be affected by it, but there's other locations around the site where you can include them. And
yes,
the only
absolutely.
thing with, yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, I did see that note in the letter that I did receive, and that's not a concern.
Yeah, and the only thing with the forming character is if there's ways that you can improve the covering of the entrances and exits. There doesn't seem to be much in the way of coverage at the doors. I'm not really concerned as much about the doors on the rear of the building, but there's really not much of a canopy on the entrances to the units. So, but
yeah, we do show at the two end units. We do show an eyebrow coming out that's approximately 3 feet deep, and then across the middle units we do show an awning coming out that's coming out approximately 3 feet. So that would provide some protection for people as they walk by.
Yeah, it's kind of deceiving because the 3D modeling shows slightly different than the elevations from what I can pick up on that. But if there's ways that you can expand on that a bit, that would probably work a little bit better too. So
we can look at pushing them out even further, but then we didn't want to go too far over the property line on the one side of the building, because that is on the east property line. So that's why we kind of brought it to that point. But if you'd like us to extend that out further, we could definitely look at that.
Yeah. But other than that, I have no issues with the project. So, and I support the variance for the east side yard setback as well.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Kevin. Jason.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I support the variance as well. In fact, if you want to move it further closer to the side yard, that'd probably be even better to get it away from the adjacent residential lots. But I don't really have much to weigh in the comment. My biggest comment is actually similar to kind of what Kevin was saying regarding the canopies. It felt a little underwhelming, especially along the front edge, and looking at the rest of the development. All of the other CRUs have a glass canopy along it. It would be nice if this had a similar detail to it to make it feel more like a cohesive development. But otherwise, that was my only comment. I appreciate the massing study where you have the higher element along the road edge. I think that's kind of a nice feature to differentiate and acknowledge the context. But otherwise, that's all I have for my comments. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Very much appreciated.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Angela?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for the presentation, Rob. I know you're in a hurry, so I just want to say I'm supportive of Kevin and the other comments made, Jason's comments, and about the awnings. I am supportive of any additional outdoor plaza space that could be accommodated somehow. And I was sort of wondering about the south elevation, the facade, that is what you see from the highway. And it just, I love the glass corner, but I was like, oh, the rest of it's a little bit, you've got the big bay door look, but maybe the landscaping is going to sort of soften that up and beautify that south elevation a little bit more. The only other things was I thought maybe this site would lend itself well to maybe some bike lockers for those commuting to work with e-bikes or whatnot, and maybe those bike lockers are, they cost them somebody $1 a day or something like that, so they could be a bit of a money generator to pay for themselves. Just an idea. And then, of course, the design guidelines do support consideration of roof deck or green roof accommodations, amenity spaces. So if there's an opportunity for a roof deck amenity space, it could be something that might be a benefit to the project. I don't know, without having further conversations, but and of course, green or solar roofs, always a great opportunity to incorporate if feasible.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Yes, regarding bike lockers, that did come up previously in talking with the owner. They feel that there's a better opportunity to provide bike lockers on Brooks Landing property because there's just more room and more opportunity to do something there than on our very tight site that we have. So that was discussed, and that's why currently they're not shown on our plan, because the owner plans on doing that on the adjacent property. So it's the same owner for both properties, just to let everybody know. Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Great, thanks. Good to know that they're already thinking in terms of the bike lockers. That's good. And Ken.
Yeah, I don't have much to add to Kevin and Jason. I think the idea of the a canopy over the doorway, or even extending the canopy along the front elevation may help the front elevation. Certainly it will help when you look at the signage. I've liked the way Rob has broken up the building and emphasized the corners. My only comment about having a roof gardener is that it allows vandals to get access to your roof. And so whether you do that or not, you really have to think about how you control it and secure it from unwanted guests. That's my only comments, I think, for this project. And I approve the variance.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Hey, Ken. Great. Yeah, I don't really have anything much to add. I was just wondering, though, about the sorry, Kate. We missed Kate. I'm sorry, Kate.
Okay, I'll keep it really short and sweet.
Go ahead.
Thank you very much for the improved pedestrian connectivity. I actually live within walking distance of this, and so I can see how that's going to make it a lot better. I would love to see on the back side of the building, since it's adjacent to a residential property, there is room for more trees. So I think the landscape architect can jam them in a little bit more. I'm looking at the spacing, it looks like 10 meters possibly. So I could see doubling the trees there just to mitigate the scale of the building to the adjacent residential lot. And other than that, I agree with most of what else has been said.
Fabulous. Thank you so much. Very much appreciated.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry about that, Kate. Okay. So yeah, my one concern was actually with the back of the property too. I think you have accesses to the different retail units along there.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Are you putting in a fence between your property and the neighboring property?
At the moment, not one is shown at the moment. We were thinking the landscaping would provide that visual fence instead of a hard fence or chain link fence. The landscaping would be more of a softer visual breakup between the two properties.
Right. No, and I was just wondering if you might want to consider the security back there then too. It's going to be kind of a attractive area for some people in this community.
Okay. Yep. Yeah. We can definitely add a fence along that property line. Not a problem.
Even thinking gating it off or something like that, because it's we've had problems in other retail areas similar to that. So just a thought. I won't put that down as an option, but just something to think about.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, we'll definitely think about that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Great. Okay. So I'm go over our I'm not hearing any objection to the variances. So we'll go with that. But in terms of recommendations, Kevin, you mentioned something about the outdoor amenity space, and I missed that. Is there a recommendation you want to make in that regard?
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Madam Chair. Yeah, if there's any way that you can incorporate an outdoor amenity space somewhere on the property, I think that would
Okay.
work very well.
Okay. Yeah, we can look into that. Absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, so I see. Consider ways to incorporate an outdoor amenity space somewhere on the property. Consider conifer trees on the site. Consider larger canopies over the entrances to the retail units, perhaps similar to the other building on the property. Consider bike lockers on the site. Consider a roof deck or amenity space. Consider green options where possible. Consider adding more trees to the back of the property. Does that cover everything? Okay, so that's 7 recommendations. Can I have a motion to accept the proposal as presented with approval for the variances and with those 7 recommendations?
Okay.
Motion from Ken, seconder. Kevin, all in favor? There we go. Great. Okay, so thanks, Rob.
Thank you very much, everybody. Very much appreciated. Thank you for accommodating me and taking time out of your days. Very much appreciated. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Okay. All right. And can I have I guess we can have a motion to adjourn our meeting. Somebody wants to make that. Ken, and seconder Kevin, all in favor? Aye. Okay. Well, good night, everybody. And does anybody else want to, I guess we're still recording, so we will